Welcome back to this episode of the Crypto Fatcat and the Crypto Skeptic. Jonathan, the Crypto Fatcat, would you be able to bring us up to speed with what's happening in the crypto market?
I sure will, Sean. It's been an eventful, you took some time away. You had a bye. I wouldn't call it a bye week. You had like a bye month or two. But all the same, a lot has happened in the crypto space since we last recorded anything. Most notably, I would say there are two main events that are most notable. One is the most recent event is that a court has ruled that XRP, which is Ripple, which is a top 10 cryptocurrency, is not a security. The SEC had been locked in a long-standing court case with them, claiming it was, but the judge said it wasn't. That was cause for massive celebration in the crypto space, because if XRP isn't a security, then likely none of the main coins are securities. And if that's the case, that changes all of the sort of what's available and what isn't to be bought and sold on exchanges, what isn't a violation. It's a big deal. So that's a really big piece. Bigger still, though, is traditional finance truly making moves into the crypto space. And as we've seen the SEC go after the current players like Coinbase, which they're currently suing, and Binance, who are they going after hard, Blackrock, Chase, Bank of America, Fidelity, all these big traditional finance players are coming in hardcore into the space. The banks are all banding together and creating a crypto exchange. It's going to be called EDX. It's going to be more along the lines of the way the stock market is done, though. So you can't buy directly from it as a consumer. You would buy through a broker, again, like the way the stock market is done. But they're all creating that as a crypto exchange. BlackRock, which is the biggest asset holder or assets under management in the world with trillions and trillions of dollars under management, has filed for a Bitcoin ETF. Sean, do you know BlackRock has filed for many, many ETFs? In fact, they filed for, I believe, 576 ETFs in their history. Do you know how many of those have been rejected? Just take a guess. Come on. Play along. Not going to guess. Okay.
Okay. I'll say 10% of them, around 60 of them.
The answer is one. One time ever has it been rejected. It was 13 years ago, I believe, is when they were trying to create a blind ETF where literally the consumers would not know what they were investing in. That's the only time ever a BlackRock ETF has been rejected. That has been seen as a signal, not just among the crypto space, but among all traditional finance players, as a sign that the way has now been cleared and ETFs will soon be approved. That BlackRock would never do this unless they knew they were going to get approved. And so there's a strong belief that likely by the end of the year, the first true Bitcoin spot ETF will be approved, which would mean, first of all, the price of Bitcoin will likely go bananas because it'll be much more available. It'll be the biggest ETF in history. Certainly it'll be the biggest first day ETF in history. Lots of big things will come of it. As soon as BlackRock filed that, many other traditional finance players started filing their ETFs as well. They've been waiting, sitting on the sidelines, waiting for what they felt was the, quote, the right time. As soon as BlackRock did it, that was the big signal. So a lot going on. And we saw the price of crypto jump as a result of these things. So Bitcoin, when we had been talking last, was around 28,000. It went as high as, I think, like 32. It's now living around 30,000, Ethereum around 1,900. But the space did sort of bump up a little bit, and it seems very, very bullish. That's where we are.
Okay, those are some fairly dramatic developments. And there's been some fairly dramatic developments here on the pod too with the Crypto Fatcat and the Crypto Skeptic, because as these changes have taken place and they've broken over society, I have slowly come to the realization that I think that you, Mr. Fat Cat, are correct. And I think that the crypto, Bitcoin in particular, seems like it is here to stay.
Wow.
And my sort of concern, my skepticism around Bitcoin was the price of it, combined with the only thing of value that it really offers is, yes, it's a secure online spreadsheet, right? But beyond that, the only thing that it really offers is the story as far as like people buying into it or not. Because someone else could create a secure online spreadsheet that's pretty much the same thing, and nobody could give a damn about it, and it's not worth anything. But Bitcoin has that first mover advantage. It's got the story behind it. And given what's happening with all of these institutional players making these movements towards Bitcoin, and towards this ETF, I think that you are onto something here, Mr. Levy. And I think that you should feel very excited about your longstanding bet that started way back in the, pre four figures days where you could get a Bitcoin for less than $1,000. And now here we are at 30,000. And some of the crazy stuff that you were talking about, as far as market cap goes and as far as the market cap of gold, if, if Bitcoin ever became worth as much as the market cap of gold, here's how much it would be worth per Bitcoin. And it just sounded so pie in the sky a few years ago. And now it no longer sounds so pie in the sky. How crazy is that?
Wow. It's incredible to hear you say these words. I mean, it's been water on rock over here, man. I've just been doing erosion. It's been years of conversations with you, and you are coming around. Oh, I notice you're coming around not really because of anything I've said, as much as I guess you trust the signaling, though. And part of it is maybe priming you for the signaling. But the signaling by BlackRock and the big financial players lets you know that, okay, this is for real, probably, right? And I think when someone like you believes it to the degree that you're now saying this with some degree of confidence, that's true for a million financial managers all across the world, where they finally have cover for making this kind of play to like add it to their clients' portfolios when they didn't necessarily have the same kind of cover before. They now will have that. It will now not be seen as this crazy, you're way out of the box, and if it loses money, you get killed for it. More like, of course you have, 1 to 5% Bitcoin in your portfolio, and it goes wherever it goes, and no one thinks anything of it, the way it used to be with gold, right? So I think I'm really excited you feel that way. I feel this way too. I think it's been a very major time, and a lot of people I don't think see it yet that way. I mean, people on the inside see it. People who know what to look for see it. But I think most of the world doesn't get how big the last month or so has been for the cryptocurrency space and what it's probably going to mean in the next few years for it, like from a price point of view, as well as just world changing type stuff beyond that. But really, if we're talking about investments and price, oh my goodness, get ready. Get ready. Like it's going to take some real. I mean, there's always a bowling ball that can come and knock all the pins down. Who knows? The world can change, but like, wow, are we lined up? We're lined up for some big numbers here. It feels like. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it's now I am still skeptical by nature. So there's some aspects of it that are sort of continue to be a concern for me. And I feel like from an investment point of view, that if someone was to invest, that they're investing in an extremely speculative, risky asset. And just like these guys are, the big institutional players are pushing forward with these spot ETFs. We don't know. They could pull the rug. There could be something that occurs that sort of undermines this whole movement forwards. But I think for me, having some of these main players who 3 years ago, 5 years ago, have these quotes disparaging crypto, talking about it as a Ponzi or garbage or like worth less than zero, who are now talking it up as if it is a form of digital gold. And these players have, their hands on the wheel of these multi-billion dollar operations, trillions of dollars in investment funds. And so if even a portion of that starts funneling towards Bitcoin, and if it's considered, like you talked about, more widely as an acceptable alternative investment or hedge or whatever it might be, then the market cap just increases exponentially if that's the case.
It seems like it, right? So Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock, I mentioned him before, biggest asset manager in the world, $8.5 trillion of assets. So he now he's been talking since they filed for this ETF. Until then, nothing except 4 years ago when he was, as you said, disparaging Bitcoin, saying basically it was only used by criminals. He now says things like, this is gold 2.0, this is digital gold. And he sees that, and that BlackRock essentially is going to be encouraging their clientele to be maybe not moving all their gold into Bitcoin, their gold money into Bitcoin money, but essentially bringing Bitcoin into the portfolio and seeing it as a replacement for gold. He really does, at least the way he's been talking about it now consistently. He's going on every possible like news show he went on. He goes on CNBC a lot nowadays. He said recently, quote, more and more gold investors have been asking about the role of crypto over the last 5 years. And he's talking about his investor. If you look at the value of the dollar, how it's depreciated over the last 2 months, how much is appreciated over the last 5 years, an international crypto product can really transcend that. That's why we believe there's great opportunities and why we're seeing more and more interest. And interest is broad-based and worldwide. So, and he also says, and this is the other thing I think makes it easier for other players to get involved, quote, as with any new market, if BlackRock's name is going to be on it, we're going to make sure it's safe and sound and protected. When a guy like that is talking this way, his voice has the power to move markets. And if we're talking about the gold market cap, I mean, Bitcoin's market cap right now at $30,000 is less than $600 billion. Gold's market cap is over $12 billion, right? So you're looking at if we could get to there, that's a 20x, let alone what's possible. I think that is the first stage of like, maybe not the first, but one of the big, it's one big milestone for Bitcoin's market cap. I don't think it's the end game from Bitcoin's market cap. I know I'm the pie in the sky guy. I understand that, but I think there's a lot more to go beyond the gold market cap because a lot more people will have access to buy Bitcoin and will want to buy Bitcoin.
Well, you're not alone in saying that now. And once again, if we were just to rewind into the not so distant past, the concept of even reaching a quarter of the gold market cap or a half of the gold market cap seemed pie in the sky. And now this whole concept of, digital store of value in a global environment where there's not only more inflation, but the level of debt is so high right now. And it's like, so if you look forward over the next 5 or 10 years with the amount of debt payments that most of the major countries are going to have, and how that's going to impact their currency, because you're going to have to, I can't see how they can't print more money. I can't see how they can't try to, manage that debt in a way that's going to devalue the currency. And so I guess that's the shocking part for me is then to sort of start to be thinking, and this is in the initial phases of that, is okay, so what's the alternative to the devaluing currency? So take away Bitcoin, take away crypto. And before that, I'm thinking, okay, what type of assets can you get that are, not going to be affected by much not be as affected by this devaluation. And those might be things like maybe oil or some type of commodities, or it might be real estate, or it might be if you were in the right kind of stocks that were able to do well in an inflationary environment because they could raise their prices because they were goods that people needed, month to month, and they were going to continue to pay those higher prices. So now to hear guys like, the CEO of BlackRock talking about this Bitcoin being an alternative, and putting it into that camp, it's a very simple alternative. And if enough people turned on to that as an alternative, they don't have to think very deeply about what are the right stocks to choose, or, what is the right real estate investment to protect the value of my dollar. All they have to think is like, oh, I can just put X, 5%, 10%, 20% of my savings into crypto. Bam, super liquid. There it goes, and it's done.
Yep, super liquid, no property taxes, easy to borrow against, which of course carries no tax liability when you borrow. Lots of great things about it. Also, you have complete control over it if you want to, right? You can self-custody it. So many good things. It's not that crazy to me to think that at some point we would evolve into having digital currency. Like we're evolving digitally in so many ways. Currency makes so much sense to be digital, right? Like all the problems with gold and dollars, quite frankly. In fact, we're seeing governments all start to move towards central bank digital currencies as a result, because for different reasons, like they want to have power and surveillance over their currencies, and they'll be able to. They'll be able to freeze anything they want. They'll be able to see where every dollar is at any time and how it's being spent. But crypto, the true crypto anyway, like the Bitcoins of the world, Ethereums of the world, and some of the others, those operate outside of some of those restrictions, outside of that surveillance and power by the government. I think that's, as we move to this more digitalized society, currency-wise, I think that's going to be very attractive, especially to the wealthy, but probably to everybody, but certainly to the wealthy. It's already somewhat attractive to the wealthy. I don't see why it would get less so as governments have more surveillance and more restrictions on how money can and can't be spent. It'll be nice to operate outside of that. And Bitcoin specifically allows you to do that really easily.
So some of the concerns that I continue to have, one is that you have companies like Binance and CZ and all of the accusations of the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes, with wash trading,
Sure.
with some of the things even that FTX got caught for, and I was seeing something recently about Coinbase and even how when Coinbase got started and how they were founded, like a lot of the funding seemed to come from Binance and from one of the other existing exchanges. And so the question is like, what's really going on behind the scenes here? When you look at even the current price of Bitcoin, how much is that manipulated? How much is the big players who are just keeping the price at certain levels? And so there's an opaqueness to understanding that market that I think makes it a worry for people who are looking towards possibly investing in that world when there's a lot of uncertainties on the existing, let's say, market players. I suppose that all changes if you do have a BlackRock or a Fidelity or some of the other big established players who sort of, take over that role of the sort of pathway on and off. If you can purchase your funds without having to go through a Coinbase or a Kraken or a Binance or these places that don't sort of resonate with, I think, mainstream consumers. Maybe that changes all that, but for now, that's still the case. And I guess so. When you think about that, what's going on behind the scenes with all the wash trading, is that a concern for you around the price point? And when you think about Binance and Coinbase, are you concerned about them as organizations?
The overall big picture, I'm not concerned at all. Mostly because, like we're saying, we're going to have regulatory clarity, I think, sooner rather than later in the United States and certainly in the rest of the world. Like Europe is moving very quickly past that, not just towards it, but past it. Traditional finance coming in is absolutely going to replace these other companies, which I don't know if that's actually a good thing or not, sort of for a bunch of reasons, but it's what's happening, and it's got to be good for like the overall health of these assets, right? Like, I don't know how good it is for the sense of like, building a company. And it feels like the SEC sort of pushed out all the current players to let all the big money traditional players come in. I don't love that. However, those are traditional players we can trust in a way that you can't necessarily trust Binance. You clearly couldn't trust FTX. Weird stuff was going on with Gemini Earn. I would guess everything's okay with Coinbase, but I don't actually know that, right? But Fidelity has a much longer track record. People trust that brand, right? Chase, people trust that brand, and they have reason to, right? These guys have managed money for a very long time, even though, by the way, the banks, pay billions in fines every year for cheating and lying and stealing and all these things. Proportionally so, they're doing a reasonably good job, right? And I gotta believe that this is going to be a good thing. So I'm not worried about it in any kind of medium or long-term thing. I think the banks are going to, the traditional finance, let me say, is going to be here and like for real in a year or so. I think by the time the Bitcoin halving happens, which is about like April next year, I think we're going to see really clear, like EDX will be completely built out. And all these traditional finance players, you'll be able to buy with them as brokers through EDX, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and hopefully a bunch of other coins too, especially with this now, this Ripple ruling, allowing other coins to be there too, because they only currently have 4, and the other 2 are awful. But Bitcoin and Ethereum are pretty good. They're the best. So I think it's extremely positive, and probably the only way this was really going to happen. I guess sometimes you have like an Amazon or a Netflix, which could have been Coinbase or could have been Gemini, which like grows, creates, this is a new thing, and they grow, and they're the monolith, and they just own the space. But the banks and the government, it didn't seem like they were going to let that happen, and seemingly have won that war. I just, I guess I wish it was different, but hey, my bank account, I don't think it's going to have a problem with it at all. I think my bank account's going to be very happy it went this way. I'm extremely bullish for the medium and long term on these assets. I already was pretty bullish. I've grown much more so with this. This feels like like a dream scenario. Like we're near best case scenario over here.
And as you reflect at this stage, any caveats? Like, in your head, is there some possibility that the spot ETF is never approved by the SEC for any of these mainstream financial players, or is there any other issues that you feel like could undermine this whole movement towards this rosy future?
There's got to be some stuff, but I can't see what it is. I have no concern at all about the ETF at this point. It seems extremely unlikely that it wouldn't. I fully expect it to be approved. Let me say it that way, rather than go double negative on you. I imagine that it's just going to be kind of roses and wine for a while, basically. Like this year should be pretty chill, and next year should be bonanza and bonzo craziness, and maybe even the next 2 years, in terms of how these assets are being invested into by the world and by traditional finance. What's the big concern at this point? I guess there could be some horrible news story that comes out that changes everyone's perception of these assets. That could happen, and that would maybe could ruin it in some way. There's always the very incredibly thin threat, but it has to exist of, if they can crack the Bitcoin security, that makes Bitcoin worthless almost overnight, essentially instantly. If someone can move Bitcoin without, that being their wallet and do it consistently and easily, like that's the end of that. These things were built so that can't be the case, though, and it's so unbelievable. Like the cryptographic numbers that it takes to get to a Bitcoin address are literally the largest numbers in human history. So, eventually there'll be quantum computing which could do that, but you can just add more digits to these numbers and make them longer still. And every digit you add makes it so much harder. It's an exponentially more difficult address to find just by adding one digit. So they can just keep doing that if they want to. It's not hard to change that code. So there aren't that many threats left. I guess currently, even the Biden administration, which has recently been talking about cryptocurrency as sort of a quote bad thing in many ways, it seems like they were mostly just clearing the field for the traditional finance players because they have not been talking it down ever since. As soon as BlackRock announced and as soon as all these EDX was announced, everyone went pretty quiet there governmentally, which isn't a surprise to me. But, it feels like it was all just part of the game. And here we are. We're now moving into this stage of it, which is traditional finance comes in, eats everybody's lunch. It's still kind of early, but it's less early than it used to be. That's what it feels like. But still early enough. But it used to be like, oh my God, we're so early. It doesn't entirely feel like that. Traditional finance is coming hard and fast.
Congratulations on your big win. Not for just what's happened over the last couple of months, but just, the improbability of that bet you made years ago and have continued to build on. And it just keeps rolling out with obviously some big ups and downs, but keeps rolling out in the direction that you would have hoped 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when you were looking at this space. It is no longer pie in the sky. Well.
It really doesn't feel like it does it when Fidelity and Chase are doing this. It feels amazing. I'm anticipating really big price movements too, like by 2025. FYI, big stuff. I'm planning for it. I'm now planning for these. I think about these things like, when I have this much money, what am I going to do when I have this much money? I think about that. It's very fun.
Yeah, I would imagine that's exciting. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this one up?
I guess the only thing, I'm two things. Number one, this clearly is not financial advice. So even though I'm saying all these very bullish things and I feel them, I'm not a financial expert per se. So you should know that and don't sue us if you do something and it doesn't work. Number two, my personal guess as to how this cycle is going to play out is the rest of this year is going to be pretty chill. Maybe slight gains as we get more good news and the government regulation starts to pave the way more and everything seems to be going well and everyone's playing nice together. The Bitcoin halving will come like March of next year. And then, 4 to 6 months later, things will really start to get nuts because that's always how it's been in the past. Unless just the Bitcoin ETF breaks all the rules and we just go crazy as soon as it drops, which is also possible. Because every time someone buys a big part of the Bitcoin ETF, actual Bitcoin has to be bought to back it. So look out below. If it's the biggest ETF in history, I believe it's going to have the biggest first day in all of human history, ETF wise. Really, I'm sure it will. It's going to be a big deal. A lot of Bitcoin is going to have to be bought and just held. It's going to be incredible. Get ready.
Okay, that's very exciting.
It's a good time to be alive.
On that note, we'll leave you for today, and we'll see. We'll come back next time and see if, as the crypto skeptic, if I have any additional things to go and become skeptical about. I submit that I probably will.
Probably.